Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Paramahansa, Parudikacharya, Astotra, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace. Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parudikacharya, Astotra, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Asamaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Hridirayed. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oops, sorry about that. On this 20th day of January 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 5, The Creative Impetus, Chapter 12, Conversation between Maharaj Rahugana and Jadabharata. Text number 4. Yadaha Yogeshwara Drishyamanam Kriyapalam Sad Vyabhara Moolam Na Hyanjasa Tattva Vimarshanaya Bhavan Amushmin Brahmate Manome Yadaha Yogeshwara Drishyamanam Kriyapalam Sadan Vyabhara Moolam Na Yanjasa Tattva Vimarshanaya Bhavan Amushmin Brahmate Manome Yadaha Yogeshwara Drishyamanam Kriyapalam Sadan Vyabhara Moolam Na Yanjasa Tattva Vimarshanaya Bhavan Amushmin Brahmate Manome Yadaha Yogeshwara Drishyamanam Kriyapalam Sad Vyabhara Moolam Na Yanjasa Tattva Vimarshanaya Bhavan Amushmin Brahmate Manome Yadaha Yogeshwara Drishyamanam Kriyapalam Yadan Vyabhara Moolam Yasa Tattva Vimarshanaya Bhavan Amushmin Brahmate Manome Yadaha Yogeshwara Drishyamanam Vyabhara Moolam Na Yanjasa Tattva Vimarshanaya Bhavan Amushmin Brahmate Manome. Go ahead. Go over there. Yadaha Yogeshwara Drishyamanam Kriyapalam Sadan Vyabhara Moolam Na Yanjasa Tattva Vimarshanaya Bhavan Amushmin Brahmate Manome. You want to try it yet? Not yet. Anyone on Zoom?
Yada Yogeshwar Drishyamanam
Yadaha Yogeshwara Drishyamanam
Kriyapalam Sadvyavahara Moolam
Kriyapalam Sadan Vyabhara Moolam
Nahi Anjasa Tattva Vimarshanaya
Na Yanjasa Tattva Vimarshanaya
Bhavan Amushmin Brahmate Manome
Bhavan Amushmin Brahmate Manome. Yet, that which Aha have said, Yoga Ishvara, O Master of Mystic Power, Drishyamanam, being clearly seen, Kriyapalam, the results of moving the body here and there, such as feeling fatigue, Sat, existing, Vyabhara Moolam, whose basis is etiquette alone, Na, not, He, certainly, Anjasa, on the whole or in fact, Tattva Vimarshanaya, for understanding the truth by consultation, Bhavan, your good self, Amushmin, in that explanation, Brahmate is bewildered, manaha, mind. Me, my. Translation. O master of yogic power, so this is King Rahugana speaking to Jad Bharat. O master of yogic power, you said that fatigue resulting from moving the body here and there is appreciated by direct perception, but actually there is no fatigue. It simply exists as a matter of formality. By such inquiries and answers, no one can come to the conclusion of the absolute truth. Because of your presentation of this statement, my mind is a little disturbed. Purport. Formal inquiries and answers about the bodily conception do not constitute knowledge of the absolute truth. Knowledge of the absolute truth is quite different from the formal understanding of bodily pains and pleasures. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna informs Arjuna that the pains and pleasures experienced in relation to the body are temporary. They come and go. One should not be disturbed by them, but should tolerate them and continue with spiritual realization. So I'm going to read the next two verses. Brahmana uvacha. Aham jano nama chalan pativyam yak partivya kasya heto tasyapi changyor adigulpa janga janu humadjoro sharodarangsha angshe di darvi shibika yasyam sauvirya raje chapadeshat aste yasmin baban ruda nijabimano rajasmi sindhush iti durmadandaha. Translation. The self-realized Brahman Jadabharata said, among the various material combinations and permutations, there are various forms and earthly transformations. For some reason, these move on the surface of the earth and are called palanquin carriers. Those material transformations which do not move are gross material objects like stones. In any case, the material body is made of earth and stone in the form of feet, ankles, calves, knees, thighs, torso, throat, and head. Upon the shoulders is the wooden palanquin, and within the palanquin is the so-called king of Sauvira. The body of the king is simply another transformation of earth, but within that body your lordship is situated and falsely thinking that you are the king of the state of Sauvira. Purport. After analyzing the material bodies of the palanquin carrier and the palanquin passenger, Jadabharata concludes that the real living force is the living entity. The living entity is the offshoot or offspring of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, within this material world, among moving and non-moving things, the real principle is Lord Vishnu. Due to his presence, everything is working, and there are actions and reactions. One who understands Lord Vishnu as the original cause of everything is to be understood to be perfectly situated in knowledge. Although he was falsely proud of being a king, King Rahugana was not really situated in knowledge. Therefore, he was rebuking the palanquin carriers, including the self-realized Brahman Jadabharata. This is the first accusation Jadabharata made against the king, who was daring to talk to a learned Brahman from the flimsy ground of ignorance, identifying everything with matter. King Rahugana argued that the living entity is within the body, and that when the body is fatigued, the living entity within must therefore be suffering. It is clearly explained in the following verses that the living entity does not suffer due to the body's fatigue. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti gives an example of a child heavily decorated with ornaments. Although the child's body is very delicate, he does not feel fatigue, nor do the parents think that his ornaments should be taken away. The living entity has nothing to do with bodily pains and pleasures. These are simply mental concoctions. An intelligent man will find the original cause of everything. Material combinations and permutations may be a matter of fact and worldly dealings, but actually the living force, the soul, has nothing to do with them. Those who are materially upset take care of the body and manufacture Daridra Narayan or Poor Narayan. However, it is not a fact that the soul or supersoul becomes poor simply because the body is poor. These are the statements of ignorant people. The soul and the supersoul are always apart from bodily pleasure and pain. Sorry. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. So one of Krishna's first teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, as Prabhupada points out here, he quotes 2:14, has to do with the temporary pleasures and pains of the body that we have to tolerate. Matra sparsha sakonteya shitoshna sugadukada agamapaino anityas tamstatiksha bharata. Matra sparsha means by contact of the senses with the sense objects. Produces various sensations. We're all familiar with it. Here he lists 4. Shita, Ushna, Sukha, Dukkha, Da. So in India it gets very hot. So Shita is cold, then that's a pleasure. And Ushna can be painful. So he says Shita, Ushna, Sukha, Dukkha, Da. So these sensations give us the sense of pleasure or pain characterized by a heat and cold, like that. But you should know that they come and they go. They're temporary. Agama apayino. And therefore they're anitya. And the conclusion is tam tatiksha bharata. But the next verse is so important. Yam hinabdiyante te purusham purushashaba samadukha sukham dhiram so amritat kalpate. Amrita means deathlessness, liberation. And he says, only one who can tolerate these, who is not disturbed by the comings and goings of the allurements for pleasure and the threats of pain, is eligible for liberation. It doesn't say he achieves liberation just by that, but that's a prerequisite for actually coming to the point of liberation. So we're back to discussing the mind. The whole previous chapter was all about how the mind is the key. The mind, basically absorbed in matter, is bring you back again and again for birth, death, old age, and disease. Now from this, what we've just read here, we can say, well, this is kind of an illusion. Right? It's all birth, death, old age, and disease. All the changes of the body are of the nature of a dream because they're asat. They're not permanent, they're temporary. Everything is changing at all times. And sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's pleasurable. You see? We try to minimize the pain and maximize the pleasure. That doesn't always work, obviously. But in any of the cases like that, the mind is absorbed in the bodily functions, and also the subtle body is also very important. We can be completely comfortable physically, but in agony mentally. That happens a lot. So both elements of the body, the subtle and gross, need to be connected to Krishna, and giving the soul a chance to transcend the bodily pains and pleasures. Now, as I was reading this purport before the class, I couldn't help thinking of the a verse in the Sadhu Sangashtaka, which is 3:25, 20 to 27. And in this passage, Kapila Dev is discussing the importance of association with sadhus, with devotees. And he begins by using with the word prasangam. Prasangam is exactly what we're in the situation now in material. Prasangam means very strong attachment and very tight association. When you're in the material consciousness, the sensations of everything, your state of mind, is you completely identify with it, and that's your experience. But inevitably, there are pains that come. You want to maximize the pleasure, but you can't always do that. And so it's in a constant state of flux and a constant state of threat. And so it's a state of fear. Even if you're in a very safe place and everything is okay, you know, but you may turn on, you look at your phone and there's this, what is that? A volcanic eruption just occurred out in the middle of the ocean? My God, I'm right next to the ocean. Maybe there'll be one here. And that, right? But that produces fear. Then you read about all the casualties and the threats and things like that. I turned my phone on that morning and there was an alert for the West Coast, right, of California. they just in case. Tsunami alert, you know. People were worrying. That in itself is a misery. To always be under threat that something can go wrong, something can happen. And if enough things go wrong, you internalize that, and it's always with you. And this low-grade anxiety, sometimes it's intense anxiety, then you have to take a pill, which is forms of another misery. So this is how it works in the material world. So what is the solution? In the course of this instruction by Kapila Dev to his mother, he gives the antidote, which is only available through bhakti. So the first thing is we have to turn our attention. Attention is everything. Turn our attention and ultimately our attraction. Attention and association go together. The sangha. When you're associating with someone or something, you're paying attention to it. Otherwise, you could be in physical association with something, but you're not really associating. Your mind is a million miles away. You're associating with something else. So it's where your attention is. So this prasanga is strong attention, meaningful association. So it has to be turned from matter to spirit, and in this case from material experiences to sadhus. And who's a sadhu? He gives several verses. Tatikshava karunika. A real sadhu is very tolerant and very merciful. And these two it's important to say both of them, because in order to really show your mercy and compassion to the fallen souls, you have to be tolerant. Because they don't want it. They're conditioned to reject that and not be open to stopping what they're doing and learning how to transform their life. So and sometimes you get attacked, sometimes you get killed. Prabhupada would always quote about Jesus Christ, how he was an ideal sadhu, because he was willing to risk his life, lose his life for giving God consciousness. So anyway, the qualities are merciful, very kind to all living entities, including subhuman. Tatikshava karana suridak sarvadehinam. He doesn't have any enmity toward anyone. That means the jata shatavat. And therefore, very peaceful. No material desires, simply Krishna conscious and no enmity. And then only can you be peaceful. He abides by the Shastras. But how do you get these qualities? Next verse. Mayanannena bhavena bhaktim kurvanti yedvidham. He says, Mai, because Kapila Dev is speaking, he's an incarnation of Krishna. So, undeviating devotion unto me. Mai ananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvanti yedvidham, with firm determination. And even to the point where matkrate chakta karma on us is willing to give up any activity that's detrimental to devotional service for my sake. And even breaking ties with family or friends if those are detrimental and impediments. That might happen sometimes, often. So, but then here's the key verse that's pertinent today. What do they do? The Lord Krishna says, second verse of the Chaturshloki Gita, we can call it, most important verses. Machitta magata prana bodhiyantak parasparam katayantaschamam nityam tushyanti chadamanti cha. They place their minds on me, these sadhus, devotees. Gata prana, they work for me, their life energy is directed to me. And they come together and they glorify me. What's the archetypal way of doing that? Sankirtan. We come together and we hear, I chant, you hear my chanting, you chant, I hear your chanting. This is the original. But also, this is also the same thing. Satam Prasangam, that comes up in this series. So, and what's the result of this? Manashraya katam rishta shunvanti katayanti cha. He says, Manashraya, those who've taken shelter of me, they chant the mrishta. Mrishta means very sweet vibrations about me, attractive. Shunvanti katayanti, they're chanting and hearing together. Tapandi vivadastapa naitan madgata chetasa. Because their minds are thus absorbed in me, therefore the threefold miseries of this world, tapandi vivadastapa, they're not bothered by them so much. They may be aware of them, but they're not impinging on their consciousness and overwhelming them with misery. The more the mind is absorbed in Krishna, the more that you can tolerate these pains and pleasures. Even to the point we find of Prahlad or Haridas Thakur, they didn't even feel them. You know, when Prahlad his father attempted to boil him in oil, kill him. Can you imagine? His father, demon, Hiranyakashipu. It wasn't that he was like gritting his teeth there and, you know, and thinking, well, I wish it would be cooler. He didn't feel anything. If the mind is completely absorbed in Krishna, then it can be completely detached from your own body. Now, in the conditioned state, the mind is completely absorbed in every little detail of the body that you can. There's millions of things we don't feel and know, but the bodily sensations. But you can transcend that, even on a material level. Some of you may have heard this lecture. You probably heard it in the course of it, where Prabhupada gave you the example of that glorious personality, Stalin, the Russian dictator, big demon. But he tells a story that he was going to have an operation on his stomach, But actually what it was he was afraid of being assassinated. He didn't trust anybody. So he said, oh, if they could put me under with chloroform, then that'll be an example for a chance for my enemies to come in and assassinate me. So he said, don't worry about it. I don't need it. He's having this operation while he's awake. How did he do it? He had the ability, I don't know where he got it, to transfer his mind somewhere else. So by the strength of his mind, he was able to tolerate that. So this is how Jada Bharata did it. You remember Jada Bharata has already been threatened with annihilation by the worshippers of Kali worshippers. He was just sitting there chanting Hare Krishna. And we have so many examples, not only Prahlad, Ambarish, and many others, who are able to be completely fearless and undisturbed because they're totally absorbed in Krishna's lotus feet. And whatever he wants is acceptable. If it's my time, take me back home. If not, then whatever. And that kind of absorption can mitigate our pains in this world. And we can feel that even in the beginning stages of Krishna consciousness. So much of the suffering in this world is inside, is mental and emotional. You get beaten around by this Kali Yuga, relationships, fear, pandemics, all these different things. How to deal with all that? Physically, it may not be happening right now, but you might think it might. What could be a more scary way of dying than alone when you can't breathe? 800,000 have already have died in America. It's not theoretical. You can imagine the kind of anxiety. So that can be mitigated by Krishna consciousness, by just chanting Hare Krishna in our way that we're doing now, seriously, 16 rounds, kirtan, absorption. Then that can be put into perspective. It's part of the material world, threefold miseries, and we're experiencing the nectar of Krishna consciousness, and it mitigates this. What to speak of becoming a pure devotee, becoming completely absorbed. So this is why it is said that one can falsely thinking upon the shoulders of wooden palanquin. In other words, everything that has its root in the material energy is ultimately false. Our conceptions of ourself, what's happiness, what's the stress, it's all of the nature of a dream. Remember that verse? Arte yavidyamane pi sangshatirna navartate. Arte yavidyamane pi. That in truth, there's samsriti, which is birth, death, old age, and disease, and all the other miseries, are of the nature of a dream. They don't really exist in reality. But those whose minds are absorbed in sense gratification, they continue to experience those sufferings, just as you experience the sufferings in a nightmare. So you can say the whole business is waking up. We're trying Jiv Jago, wake up to the reality that we're eternal spirit souls, we're part and parcel of Krishna, that He's our eternal friend and protector, and we should become completely absorbed in thinking of Him, glorifying Him, serving Him, exploring our mind. And this will make us happy in this life, and what to speak of the next. Even in the midst of the conflagration of this Holocaust called the Kali Yuga, which at any time can blow up, and the whole thing can go. I mean, this is a reality. If someone's walking down the street with 2 AR-15s, then we want to do something about it. Call the police, maybe lock the doors, right? It's a threat. It's obvious it's coming. But the geopolitical situation, the world situation, the climate change, I mean, yes, there's going to be, we know that there's going to be a 10,000-year era of Lord Chaitanya's movement, and we're just at the beginning of it, so it's not going to blow up. But it certainly looks dangerous, and it looks, pretty hopeless. I mean, from what we can see. So therefore, that's that much more impetus to be serious about Krishna consciousness, to not be of the mentality, well, okay, it's a gradual process. I have so many lifetimes and whatnot. It's a gradual process, but we may have not so much time left. So therefore, we should take it very seriously. It's in our hand to chant seriously, to concentrate, to give up things which we know are impediments, and make as much advancement as possible. So this and seeing the world through the eyes of Shastra, to see everything around us as a manifestation of Krishna's energies, those two energies. When we see some living entity, or there's a tree, there's a living entity in there. How unfortunate the tree is. You know, you can chant 1 or 2 mantras to the tree. Why not? You know, try to give some Krishna consciousness. Of course, but the most important thing is the human beings which are eligible to actually understand and receive the message. We should try to help propagate Krishna consciousness, book distribution, Harinam distribution, Prasadam distribution, keep the temple in such a state that it's attractive, and you know, kirtans. All these things are not only for our own benefit, but for helping Krishna to reach out to the conditioned souls. This is really how it's working. Krishna wants it to happen. Lord Chaitanya, he predicted my name would be chanted in every town and village throughout the world. So how's that going to happen? He went throughout India, but he left the rest of the world for his devotees. And Srila Prabhupada, at the behest of his spiritual master, who tried, he sent some emissaries to UK, didn't really do much. But this is the impetus, our active service. We got these two lines. One is maintaining our own Krishna consciousness, being serious about wanting to advance and taste more and more of the nectar of Krishna consciousness. I think was it last night? We were talking about these 3 gates leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed. But there's a good greed too that we want to cultivate. And what is that? It's like a miser. Misers are the epitome of greed, isn't it? They just collect things and they just take pleasure from having a lot of things, right? In the bank, and they like to see their gold, collect it, and I got so much, you know. How can I get more? Yeah. It's a disease. It's one of the gates leading to hell. But there's also a good greed. Wasn't there a slogan like that? Greed is good? Thank you. And that first line, Prabhupada said, this is where he got the idea for this phrase of Krishna consciousness. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati. Mati means the mind. Bhavita means absorbed. The mind absorbed in the rasa, the pleasure of serving Krishna. That's Krishna consciousness. So if we can find it somewhere, we should buy it. Have you seen it in Walmart? Have you seen it in Costco? Have you seen it in Ace Hardware? Maybe Amazon. Let me key it in. No. Huh? Yes. So okay, suppose if you find where you can buy it, you have to have the price. And what is that price? Laulyam. Your ardent desire for it. How to get that ardent desire? That's the key. And so there's a verse about the miser. I'm going to share this with you. It has to do with the holy name, because the more that we're eager to hear and chant the holy name, that's a measure of our Krishna consciousness, right? Of our developing of attraction to Krishna. So he says, Vichayani, this is from Padyavali, I forget the author. Vichayani, Vichayani, Vichintyani, Punakpanah, Kripanasya Dhanani, Vatvan Namani, Bhavantu Naha. Compelled to constantly collect and count his precious hoard, the miser contemplates his wealth with avaricious aims. Please bless me to become a miser who's compelled, O Lord, to constantly collect and count and contemplate your names. We can pray for that eagerness, that taste for the holy name. There's a Nam Ashtaka by Rupa Goswami. And that's certainly not as well known as the Shikshashtaka, but there's some very nice verses. There's 1 or 2 verses Prabhupada quotes in his purports here. But the last one is a prayer to the name, that you will always appear on my tongue with great relish. It's the source of that devotee's name. How is that? Maruri Pura. Narada Vino Jivana Sadormi Niryasa Maruri Pura Tvam Krishna Nama Kamam Spodame Rasane Rasena Sada. Oh, holy name, you are the inspiration of the Vina of Narada Muni. Sudormi Niryasa Maruri. You are concentrated. You appear in concentrated waves of nectar. Jivana Sudormi Niryasa. Niryasa means concentrated. Madhuri Pura, a flood of sweet nectar. please always appear on my tongue with great relish. Let me always have great eagerness to chant you and never lose that attachment. So we can directly experience this, these statements by Jada Bard, how all of this bodily awareness and things, which is what's the foundation of our sense of suffering in this world, can be is just unreal. It's false, falsely thinking you're the king, and falsely thinking that I'm suffering. That we can transcend that and learn to tolerate by developing our ardent taste for Krishna consciousness. And this is how you find such incredible courage amongst the devotees who are preaching. They feel the protection of Krishna, even in the most difficult situation. Like you see Prahlad, who's the ideal preacher, right? Speaking truth to power. Who could be more, ideal than that? And he didn't get angry at his father, and he wasn't terrified of his father. He just spoke the truth. His father reacted as he probably knew he would, and he became completely absorbed in the nectar of Krishna's lotus feet. And in that way, he was able to tolerate without any mental disturbance. And his father was freaked out by it. He said, "How could he have such strength? This is a form of strength." And he said, "I'm getting the strength from the same place you are, Father, from the Lord, Supreme Lord." That just made him more angry. Of course, he punched the pillar, and that was the end. And Nisringadev appeared in this personification of fury at the torment of his dear devotee. So that's this, but it's not easy to do this, because for millions of lifetimes, the mind has been absorbed in the body and identifying with it, whatever form we have taken. So now we're trying to transcend these designations. That's why the simple clothes, simple lifestyle. You try to negate those things which encourage this false designation. And Rupa Goswami gives this definition of bhakti: Sarva upadi vinimuktam tatpodatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakta ruchite. That being free from these false designations, just like Govardhan was explaining how he became a devotee, and he was entangled, maybe if I may say, in relationships with certain people, and then you were becoming a devotee, and you were becoming disinterested in what you had been so interested in before. In other words, he was changing his sense of self, and eventually made complete sense to move in, because now he was identifying himself as a devotee. So we should be a devotee. And that means in dress, in talk, in food, in what you eat, all of the normal functions need to be Krishnaized. Prabhupada's famous word. They changed it to Krishnaized, but I like Krishnaized better. And so that, what does that do? It means that you're no more pulled and impelled by these designations. If you're going to be and dress and act and hang out with the gangbangers, then naturally you're going to be involved in that kind of lifestyle. But if you give up that designation, you no longer hang out with them, you no longer dress like them, you don't think like them, you don't talk or hear about them, then it's just like a snake, getting rid of its skin. It's like, enough with that already. Now let me have this new identity, the real identity as a devotee. So all of us are really devotees, and we all have our identities in relation to Krishna. The basic point, which is service at his lotus feet, humble service. But the details of that are revealed gradually as you become more and more pure, and Krishna Katha becomes so sweet. You go on for hours. What happened to the time? What happened to time? Is it already 10 o'clock? I thought we just started reading. No, we started reading at 6, and hearing and chanting and doing kirtan. Now the time is gone. So that's what this will ultimately culminate in, and we can try to taste that, and realize we're not bound up by what we've done and who we've been and what we've done. Yes, there are vestiges of that affecting us, but that doesn't have to determine our life or our identity. This is real life is Krishna consciousness, and illusory life is everything else, even though it may seem so real. And if we become absorbed in Krishna, then no matter what happens, that absorption will remain, and that'll be our salvation, our Krishna consciousness. Even at the time of death, antakali cha mameva, which is the most difficult time, we can still remember Krishna. And that's the goal. Okay, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna.
You always got a question or comment. Just want to check if there's anything local. Okay, go ahead, Vijay. Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu. Thank you very much. You're very kind. And thank you for your, as usual, exceptional class. Prabhu, related to the text you chose for today, 4 to 6, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 12,
yes.
Texts 4 to 6. I find in text 4, at the very end of the purport, the last sentence of the purport, the following quote, one should not be disturbed by them, but should tolerate them and continue with spiritual realization, end quote. So based on this quote, my question is as follows. What is the connection, if there is any, between this quote and the principle of making the best use of a bad bargain?
Okay. Well, it's a very close connection, actually, because what Prabhupada is quoting there at the end of the purport, at least in the Veda base, they pulled it in here, 214. 214 is matra sparsha kaunteya. The pains and pleasure of this world come and go. One should tolerate them. And the next verse says, as I explained, that those who can tolerate and who are not disturbed by these things are eligible for liberation. So, being in this material world is a bad bargain compared to life in the spiritual world. We have so many impediments, so much conditioning. In other words, we're in a diseased condition. So that's a bad bargain. That's the bad bargain part. But with knowledge and with proper association, we can still practice Krishna consciousness and become cured. So that's what it means, the best use. What is the bad bargain? We're conditioned, we're short lifetime, we're always disturbed. Right, here we are in the Kali Yuga. We have so much karmic reaction. You know, we may have done damage to our body or our brain through previous activity, but we're still functional, we can still practice. So it's, that's the bad bargain. But if we make the best use of it, we can still make spiritual progress. And in this life or a future life, we can attain perfection. So that's the idea, to recognize that material life of any kind is a big restriction on the soul. Our real nature is not being manifest. We have so many hang-ups, so many attachments, so many fears. But if we can, through strength of will and good association and strength of the intelligence, say, okay, be that as it may, I can still engage in Krishna consciousness, even with this contaminated body. That's Lord Krishna's mercy. And by that best use of that bad bargain, gradually we can become more and more qualified to render devotional service to Krishna, and more enlivened in the devotional service. So that's the idea. But we have to tolerate in order to even begin devotional service. Because the mind, you know, the conditioned mind is always telling us, what are you doing? You know, come on, let's go to the bar. Let's go, you know, we got to make some money. The rent is coming. You know, there's a million different things that are telling to postpone or negate Krishna consciousness. But you have to kick all that out and realize the importance of it. That's why the association with sadhus is so important, because personal association always has a tremendous effect, good or bad. And if you're intelligent enough to, as Kapila Dev says at the beginning of this, to turn your attachment, your affection, from the things of this world to sadhus, then that opens the door of liberation. That's the whole idea. So the best use of the bad bargain is to take that associate of the sadhus, which most practically in this age means opening one of Prabhupada's books and reading it with attention. and then going from there. That's the best use, and it leads to more best practices, which ultimately culminate in bhakti. Does that make sense?
Oh my God, better than making sense. I need to say this, Dravida Prabhu. I don't know what to say because of how good your answers to my questions are, Prabhu. You're amazing. Hare Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. That wasn't the end. If there's any questions. No? You're okay? All right. Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Vijay. Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.